What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, as always, Kevin Coleman at DuBois_22, and I am excited to bring you guys another episode of my favorite series. And I know it doesn't get a lot of love because no one cares about the freshmen, but I absolutely love this series, and that's Freshman Focus, man. I'm bringing in some of the guys that we see that are taking the college football world by storm, and these are the next guys, right? When we talk about fantasy, Devy, college football, who's going to take over? And that guy is Richard Reese from Baylor, and he's a fun player, man. Running back, 5'9", 175, true freshman out of Belleville, Texas. And what we've seen from him this season has been a lot of fun. Seeing his rise, right? We've seen these Baylor running backs kind of come in and definitely dominate. And he's a small school kid, right? 3-star kid. What he was able to do, like I've been very, very excited to watch him. Obviously, he was the running back 58 of the class, 103rd best recruit in Texas, and he's come on in Baylor and kind of proven to be a legitimate college football piece. So let's look at his stats and just kind of go over them. So a little bit on the smaller side. We're going to talk about that when we get to kind of things he should work on. But just in terms of what he's been able to do this season, 156 attempts, 798 yards, and 13 touchdowns. He has 12 catches, 85 yards, hasn't scored yet there. And he has just looked very, very good. When they've had injuries, he stepped right into this. They probably weren't thinking of him actually coming in and contributing right away. But with him being here, he's given Baylor, like, hey, they're 6-3 for a reason. Obviously, they lost a couple games there that they probably shouldn't have lost, especially that West Virginia game. But in a running back room with Quaylon Jones, Tay McWilliams, some of these guys that we've seen that have done it, like Richard has kind of stepped up and been that guy. He has 156 attempts compared to Craig, who's at 68, and Quaylon, who's at 65. Like with what Richard has been able to do, like you have to give him the benefit of the doubt here. Like, hey, he could be the real deal. I know he had those big games early, right? So when there was injuries against Texas State on 156 yards, everybody's like, is this the real deal? Yeah, he's the real deal. And we're thinking of what he's going to do. Now, as a runner, let's talk about what he is. Speed, man. Like speed just pops off first. Speed is the first and foremost thing when you see him. He ran track in high school. He was one of those guys when you're looking at just an all-around athlete. He was right there. In 2021, he helped Bellevue to the Texas 4A regional semifinal. So he was right there in terms of like what he was as a prospect. But speed, man, I mean, you see it, that north-south runner, he gets up. And even though he is smaller, he does have that north-south running ability. Like those two things really go together there, and explosiveness. Like he explodes through the line. You're going to see that. He gets to the outside. He's going to explode there. He gets around the corner, like those type of things. Like you love that. And he was very, very productive in high school. Like when you're talking about production here, he was in 4A. He had 218 attempts for 2,200 yards and 35 touchdowns as a senior. And that's where you see that explosiveness, that speed. He gets to the outside. When you watch his tape, it's just funny in high school. Like he's playing a man against boys in that class. He had 6,600 yards total and 85 touchdowns in his career. I mean, he was a 3-time district offensive MVP, and he was only a 3-star guy. And I think he was severely, severely underrated in terms of the and 247 the process, just based on what he was able to do. And when we talk about explosive speed, 22.12 in the 200 meter. I mean, those are the type of numbers. Those are the type of things you're looking for when you're looking at these diamond in the rough guys. What are those numbers? What are those track numbers? And he has that. You're going to see that on the tape. Now, some things that he can maybe kind of work on when we're talking about his overall process and where he's at. First of all, his size. I mean, we got to get a little bigger. Like if he's listed at 175, he still has room to grow into that size in terms of like, hey, strength, all those performance. When we think about these kids, we understand that there's going to be a level, especially a kid that Baylor probably thought he may come in and just redshirt. So when we're thinking of like, hey, play a few games, get some under your belt, redshirt, put on some size, and he's been rushed into that kind of, starting lineup based on injuries. And so there is going to be size. I expect him to get a little bigger, and he's got the frame. It looks like he's got the frame for it to get a little bigger. Now, will he ever get that 200 mark? I don't know, especially with this ass. So that's why you got to put these things in grain of salt when we're thinking of Devy related. Like, what is that Devy going to be? It's got to be 200 for me when I'm looking at that. Pass catching, he has it. He's done it. He doesn't have a lot of success from it in terms of this year, like just in terms of like production wise, right? He can do it. He can get to the outside and do those things. But even in the high school level, looking at it, most of it when we're thinking of is just rushing, so we'd like to see a little bit more of that. And then the power is not going to be there. Like he's a north-south guy. I think he does have some kind of strength when he runs. I mean, obviously, if you're going to rush for 6,000 yards in high school, you're going to have that. But that comes around with the size as well, right? So where is that going to be? Now, he gets in the red zone. We see him kind of get those goal line carries. That's the reason why he has 13 touchdowns. But you wonder if his body can do those power runs like that over and over again, right? When he's getting hit, and can he kind of take away from that? So that's kind of my question mark in terms of Richard, just in terms of what he's done. Now let's just pop on the tape a little bit. So we're just going to watch some of his runs here, and you're going to see this explosiveness in the hole. So when he gets there, he gets that second level. Those are those are the plays, right? Like that's where really he separated himself. Those are the things that we saw when he came out. Again, kind of area there again, explodes, kind of scores a touchdown. So again, you see these type of things and see these plays that he gets. Those are the areas that you really like to see from him. So those are, again, when you're watching him play, and especially in this game, like you'll see them, that vision. I didn't really highlight the vision, but that vision kind of getting through, and that one cut up, and this is where I think, man, I just have a lot of fun watching these guys. That's why I get so excited. Like this one cut right here, when you're watching him play and he get that explosiveness, like those are the things that pop off. So he knows where it's going to be. The zone blocking scheme's there. He sees that zone blocking scheme. One cut up, sees the hole, and he's going to dash through it. And he gets a 14-yard gain, right? Somewhere in there. So those are the type of plays from him when you're seeing him as a runner that you're like, wow, he can do it. Then he gets to the outside here. He's going to be able to slip through that hole. And then he lowers his shoulder, right? So those are the size concerns. Like, hey, he's going to lower that shoulder to go there. Here's his receiving ability. Like I said, he does have that ability to at least catch the ball, right? So we're not talking about that. And he can run through players. So you saw that. You're not going to wrap up and go and take him down. He's going to try to run through you. So he does have that physicality. Like he likes to do that. So that's something to notice on tape, okay? But then again, this is where his bread and butter is going to be. Getting to the outside, exploding through. And when he turns the corner, based on what I've seen, just based on watching, I've watched a lot of Big 12. I got some crap from it from my boy, Jeff Bell. I don't think there's a lot of players that can catch him on the outside. Like those are not a lot of players. There's not a lot of players in college football that can catch him when he gets and turns the corner. And that's the highlight, right? I like my speed guys. I like those guys. But him having 13 touchdowns and where he's able to go, like Richard has looked very, very good this year. Now let's talk about outlook and where we see him at. So I had some questions about this in the Patreon and some other stuff. And I said, well, what is he, right? So is he a Devy relevant guy? I don't know yet. I think no. I don't necessarily think he's Devy relevant. I think he's a hell of a player. And I think in C2C, yeah, you're going to draft this kid because I think he's going to get the volume just based on what he's done alone. Like look at the last two games. So Oklahoma, he didn't get a lot of carries. He scored a touchdown, but they didn't want to give him a lot of carries because against Kansas, he carried the ball 31 times. Against Texas Tech, he carried the ball 36 times. And he had 5 touchdowns in those games combined. Like he can do that, right? So for C2C purposes, especially next year, which it looks like it's probably going to be his backfield, I think it could be. Like we're not talking about timeshare anymore. Kind of just depends on what Craig Williams and these other guys do, but I think he's kind of ahead of them in terms of what he's been able to put on the field. So he's going to be that starter guy. So C2C, yeah, if you're in college fantasy and C2C, you're like, yes, I'm going to get this guy. I think Devy, he's still time to see. I think time will tell with him. I don't necessarily think I'm going to draft him probably as high as he's going to go based on production, just because of that. With Devy, it's just that size, man. I think for me, from a running back perspective, from that size and Devy in that kind of league, I'm out. But if college football, he's going to be one of the top runners in the Big 12. Like he is that good. He's that solid. What he's been able to do as a freshman has been phenomenal. And that's why we like to highlight this series and talk about these guys. So shout out to Richard Reese. Shout out to what he's done. So again, remember, Richard Reese, if you don't know who this guy is, go find him. Go watch his tape. Go have some fun with him in terms of just college football and in style. I hope he is going to get that 1,000-yard mark. I think he can here down the stretch. If he hits that 1,000-yard mark, then we really seriously got to start considering him as a Devy prospect. Also that production. But again, we got to just always, think about that size. Then you have this strengths, things he needs to work on. So as always, appreciate you guys tuning in the channel. We love all the love we're getting on the channel. Hit that like and subscribe button. We know so we can bring you new content. You tell us what you like. So I will see you guys next time.